Henry.
Andre Bracy.
Cassandra Wilson.
Tia Shawn Robinson.
And Dr. Johnny Griffin.
And we are the group New Jack Go, and we're conducting a research interview with Dr. Griffin on her past research.
And current research. So, Dr. Griffin, can you tell us again, where are you from? Where did you go to undergrad, and where did you get your graduate degrees from?
Okay. I was born in Mound Bayou, Mississippi, and I've lived different parts of the country. I have my undergrad degree from the University of Wisconsin in Spanish and psychology. I have a master's degree in voc rehab from University of Wisconsin in Stout, and I have a master's degree in sociology from American University, and I have a PhD from Howard University in sociology. My master's is in sociology from American University.
Okay, and which one of those schools or undergrad or grad did you have your first experience with research?
As I recall, it was at American University. Well, actually, no. I guess as I think back, it had to be at University of Wisconsin when I was doing research for my master's in vocational rehabilitation. I'm what they call a work evaluator, and we did have to do a lot of research. What do you call it? Lord, I can't even think right now. Qualitative research, and I guess you can say you did quantitative, but I guess you can say grad school.
Okay, so you just mentioned you did qualitative for your first time. Mm-hmm. So which one do you enjoy most, qualitative or quantitative?
Quantitative. Yes, especially I like to do content analysis, and yeah.
So why do you like quantitative more than qualitative?
I was told by one of my professors that it was a little easier to do. If you want to do something easy, especially for your dissertation, do quantitative. That's what he said. Okay. And you don't have to, especially if I do content analysis. I mean, you actually depend on your professor. Some professors believe that quantitative can be qualitative, qualitative can be quantitative. For example, content analysis, some professors may say that's only quantitative, but you can also make that qualitative if you look for themes and things like that. So I would prefer doing quantitative, especially I like content analysis because I can look at all kinds of data and draw out a lot of information from that. So.
Okay, and what was some of your dissertations on?
Oh, my dissertation. Well, let's see. For a master's degree at American University, my dissertation was on the concept of illegitimacy. And for my PhD from Howard University, my dissertation was on the construction, reconstruction, deconstruction of welfare relative to African Americans. That was quite extensive. I learned a lot. I learned that welfare, we associate
Here we go.
welfare with black people. Welfare was the federal welfare. The first one was in 1935. It was the first federal welfare program under FDR's New Deal. It was not for black people. It was for widowed and deserted white women, and you had to be married. It was not for women who had children out of wedlock. All right, and as I said before, it was the first federal welfare program, and it's very interesting what you learn, especially when I did all my research into that program. I learned an awful lot about welfare, and it was interesting that the black people who were involved in trying to get the New Deal, they purposely, no, they were after the professional. They were after monies for or grants for or funds rather for people in certain professions. The Southern lawmakers did not want this New Deal to go through, which would have, given you welfare, well, at least aid to families with dependent children. It gave you old age pension, workers' compensation. But the way FER got it pushed through or passed was that the Southerners, lawmakers, said, we will not vote for this unless you exempt two occupational categories, domestic and agricultural. And that's where most black folks were. And they said, if you exempt these two, we'll sign the bill. And this is all, you can research all this. And they said the reason that we want this is that if you let them get workman's comp or let them get all these other benefits, they'll be making more money than we pay them. And that's all documented. I did research and found all these things that they had said. But welfare it's being associated with black people, and that's a misnomer. It is not. Black people did not want welfare.
Say that again.
It was an embarrassment.
You hear that, Jeremy?
It was an embarrassment in my lifetime to be put on welfare.
What about now?
Well, now it depends. Now welfare has become such a class issue, and black folks still are not the majority of people.
Hello.
See, what they do with us is that this is part of my research. They've tricked us with this idea of disproportionality. You listen, you hear a lot of people say the rate, or you hear them say disproportionately black people are higher in this, or have higher rate. The key word is disproportionate. Don't forget that. Start listening, you're disproportionate. Well, Catherine Russell is a criminologist who did research, and I included her data in my dissertation on disproportionality. And she said that there's something wrong with this, with using this formula of disproportionality, because what they do is no matter what you have done, whatever you're in, whatever deviance, whatever, she said they're comparing a percentage, your percentage, the black percentage, with the so-called black population. So no matter what you are involved in as a black person, if they keep your population at 12%, or even if it's 15%, and no matter what they look to see what kind of crimes you're committing, you will always have a higher percentage, perhaps, in that crime. Not necessarily higher. Let's say if they do a comparison of white and black, white will have a higher percentage. Let's say teenage pregnancy. Blacks may be 40%, whites might be 60%. What they do is compare 40% to 15% of the total population, and with whites they will do maybe 65%. But if you look at 40% and 15%, blacks are disproportionately higher. They have a higher rate. And that's when people take that idea and they say blacks have a higher rate disproportionately, but people hear it saying that we do more of whatever. You can use crime, reading, dropout, anything you use, they will compare it to what they say is the population. Well, Dr. Catherine Russell said, why are we using this formula? Why are we doing this? And not too many people have really answered that question. We all continue to say disproportionately blacks have a higher rate in whatever. And so when she questioned this some years ago, and I put it in my dissertation, and I sometimes I teach it to my class to bring the idea to them. But this is something that really we need to bring out in the forefront, because people get the misconception that we commit more crimes, that we are more in jail, that we're all because they are comparing a percent with the population. And we really need to start looking at that, all of us as researchers. We really watch our language, watch the language that we're using, because you don't hear the disproportionality, you hear we do more of this.
Okay, so you told us about your past dissertations. What are you doing now? Like, what research are you working on now?
Okay, I mentioned the extensive family.
Yeah.
That's where you have, I call it parental multiplicity, make it sound real big, But that's where you have multiple parents. You have mothers who have children by other partners, fathers have children by other partners. They have children together and by other partners. And I just did, that's just one of the name the others. Payday loans, that's another study. And it's kind of hard to get people to be part of that study. But I've got my IRBs for both of those. Abandoned cemeteries, I'm really interested in that. I was working on one with comprehensive examinations. I've done a lot on that. Of course, the family. I've done besides the extensive family, just the family structure in general. And then a few other things I've started working on. I haven't completed them, but I've done my lit review, and I've even put some of it in the SPSS. I just have not written it, and that's what happens if you are researching. A lot of times, a lot of people won't research. So work on a study. You won't do your research. But then if you do your research, it just kind of stays there, and you go to something else. Mm-hmm. So what as a professor, I have to I need to stop doing as much as I do for students. Because I'm very student focused, and I could be working on something, and a student will come in and needs some kind of assistance, and I will do that. Actually, I even tutor students who need tutoring in Spanish. I've had my advisees come in, or one of my students come in to have trouble with Spanish. Sit down. I start tutoring them in Spanish. Well, I don't have to do that, but that's part of my knowledge, and you need help in Spanish. Okay, but now why don't I say, look, you go up there to the Spanish department, get a tutor. But I don't know, I sort of, just like I teach the way I wish I'd been taught, and I teach trying to figure out how do you learn, and I try to teach according to how you learn. And I mentioned that, I can't remember verbatim what I might have said about some teachers who some teachers can't teach. They can profess, but they can't teach. They know their subject matter, like many of us don't even know the palm of our hands, right? But you know your subject matter, but can you teach your subject matter? And unfortunately, you got too many people who can't teach a subject matter. Of course, you can't tell them that. You can't tell them, and I can't tell them. All right, depends on whatever their rank is. But that's unfortunate, and so a lot of students get very frustrated. Some drop out. Some don't do as well as they can, because you have teachers who can't explain it so that you can understand it. They can only explain it the way they know how to explain it. And they repeat. It's happened to me. They repeat exactly the same thing. So it's on you to understand what they're saying. But why is that the objective? Isn't it the objective that you understand? If it's the objective is that you understand, why do some of us make it the objective that you understand it the way I give it to you? And that, I think, is what's so confusing. So to make it through college nowadays with a lot of, I don't know how y'all do it.
Thank you.
But see, you now. I'm not going to put all the blame on us as teachers or professors, because you have a lot going. You have a lot on your plate, and you have a lot of things. But you've got to be more structured too, and more organized in what you do. And so we both have to look at, what do I need to do, what do you need to do, and I think that way you'll be successful. And just as I tell students, whatever class you're taking, treat it as if it's your major. Treat that class as if it's your major. And sometimes in a class that you take, if the professor can't get you to understand something, then go to each other and try to maybe you can explain to your cohort what the professor's trying to say. Or go to another professor. Just don't tell that professor that you went to another professor. Okay.
And of those, the research projects you're working on now, which are you more engaged in?
Depends. The one that I need to be engaged in is an extensive family, because that's my family. I think I mentioned my father had 20-some kids by 14 women, and because of that being so close to me, and I've got all my data, I've got an SPSS, but because it is me I'm talking about, or my family I'm talking about, it's been very difficult for me to go on and finish that paper, that report, and it is really something that society is ready for. I don't know if I mentioned that I've written 2 books, Mama's Baby, Daddy's Maybe, which is based on the extensive family. and then I've written another one called But Jacob Still Loved Rachel. You can look that one up. You can look both of them up, actually, but only one you can get. And that But Jacob Still Loved Rachel has to do with women who try to get a man, keep a man, make a man love him by having their baby. And what's happening is you are having babies by someone thinking, if I have this baby, I got you. All right. I did a paper on that. I did a presentation on teenage pregnancy, another way of another consequence of teenage pregnancy, and I talked about my extensive family, because if you have teenagers having babies by many people, you are creating an extensive family. Normally, what they're talking about with teenage pregnancy is how much it costs to raise a child, how much tax money goes into it. It interferes with your career. Well, what about the children? What about the families that you're creating? You understand?